Well, hello. This is a quick video about the stock market, where it's going. And about the past week has been carnage. 12% down in 1 week, sell off after sell off. The only day it paused a bit was on Wednesday. Uh, where the market is going is kind of a panic selling, really. But at the same time, there are a couple economic factors in the backdrop that allowed for the setup to happen. We've had a straight up run up, except for 2018. From 2008 and 9, the housing crisis, when we hit a bottom, it was somewhere in 2009-ish. I don't quite remember. But when it rose up, stock market, it went up to like in a pretty straight line up to 2018. 2018, we had some faltering. We had the economy slowing. Even that's when like the housing boom had kind of slowed down a bit. We noticed that on the real estate side, on the lead generation, Facebook side of things. But then we saw the market go straight back up when the Federal Reserve cut more rates and made quantitative easing more palatable. So where are we now? We had a very frothy top where like Tesla and all these other .com type of space, SPCE, Virgin Galactic Holdings, I believe it is. It had these precipitous rises in stock prices, and it looked kind of fishy to me. A lot of like emotional buying, and then you had some people selling off on other stocks. So these momentum stocks, this type of euphoria, people just FOMO, fear of missing out on the stock market, that started happening a bit. And then the coronavirus was finally the nail in the coffin, where you have all this growth, and growth financed by the Federal Reserve, central banks, and low interest rates, and a lot of frothy money just moving everywhere. All the stocks that were meant to be bought in the last 10 to 12 years have been bought. All these hedge funds are full of stocks, almost gluttonous levels of stocks just being held. And all these hedge funds are tapped up, all their funds have been spent, and the portfolios are full. There's not a lot of buying room, there's not a lot of demand for these stocks at this point. A lot of people are profit taking in the last 10 years, so 10, 12 years. So a lot of people are selling now, a lot of people are cashing out, and maybe the first 6 to 10% could be even attributed to just profit taking. Now, don't forget the other side of the coin. You have a lot of short sellers who have been sitting on the sidelines waiting for something like this. I'm typically a bear myself, so I look at the market half full, half empty, I mean, and I want to short. So I've been shorting since Wednesday or Tuesday. I've been traveling Monday and Tuesday. I wish I shorted earlier, so I missed a lot of the gains. But right now, the market's frantic, and a lot of it has to do with profit taking and short sellers coming in, seeing the blood in the water. And short sellers, what they do is they sell the stock first and buy it back later. They borrow the stock, they sell it, and then they buy it back later at a cheaper price, premium. Uh, it's kind of apparent with the economy where it's going. A lot of the market movers, and what is the economy based on? It's based on cash flow. It's based on exchanging hands, trade. That's what stocks are all about. And there's business as well. And this coronavirus is scaring people, and government officials will have to put restrictions on travel to try to taper the virus from spreading further. What does that mean? It just means that, like, you already see these big events, these festivals, these conferences being canceled. People are fearful. People don't want to travel during these times and risk transmission because it's transmitting asymptomatically. The coronavirus and the economy right now are very closely held together and paired together right now, because that's the main emotional driver for these two entities. Because even if the virus itself is not fatal, it's not killing people, but it's affecting human behavior and human psychology. And when you have a fear, it's like a terrorist attack. People don't want to go outside their homes. They don't want to do things and travel. They don't want to exchange hands with tourists, and tourists don't want to go to these places because they're afraid that they're going to catch something. And it's really changing behavior, human behavior and psychology, consumer behavior and psychology. And that's the hardest thing to change in an economy. It's hardest to acquire a customer and go into like a new product, a new vertical. It's hard to convince someone to be your customer, and brand loyalty And human behavior and psychology is so hard to change, but when you have something like this, especially media purporting it and spreading the fear and panic, it doesn't even matter if the coronavirus is even real. It is real, but even if it weren't real and that didn't kill as many people, the effects to the human behavior is that stark that they might even cancel the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, which I'm speculating that happens. So, what is the takeaway here? There's going to be a lot more teleworking, telecommunicating. There's going to be a lot more teleconferencing. You see that even the IMF and these other big organizations are thinking about having these type of conferences remotely. They're going to have a lot more concerts and other venues just to limit their people and audiences. I mean, BTS just reported that they're canceling their Asia tour in Korea. And in Korea, you know, there's a hyper spreader. There's a flight attendant. I don't know if I went over this in the last video, but it boggles my mind that this flight attendant had spread the virus and been on multiple airlines, and he had the coronavirus. And think about him passing the cups, passing the food to each passenger, and all these people are taking it, putting the drinks in their mouth and taking the little packages and putting it in their mouth and their face. I mean, they're not wearing gloves, only at the end to collect the garbage, right? So this is really remarkable. So you look at the patterns of the past, the present, and then that allows you to figure out what's going to happen in the future. And that's kind of like how my brain thinks always. I look at, assess the situation, assess what happened, and again, you have all these new cases popping up in New Zealand, Lithuania, all these new cases, and people are just traveling and walking around asymptomatically, and they're passing to their friends. It's just this ghost-like virus that is just spreading like an epidemic, a pandemic. And the diagnostic tools aren't there, and people are like, oh, it's not really spreading that much. I mean, Nigeria just had their first case spreading in Africa, and Africa doesn't have a very good healthcare system. I mean, even China, they're not really a first world country, but second and third world country, you can consider them, and they couldn't handle it. I mean, the spread was so fast in Wuhan, in Hubei, and then all the other provinces when they had Lunar New Year, traveling before, and all the airplanes before the Lunar New Year, and they weren't allowed to come back. And think about all the transmission that's happening in their local communities when they went back home to mama and papa during the holidays. So it's the future is written in the sand. This is, and it's coming from so many different points of attack that the U.S. is just kind of like finally admitted, like, look, we can't stop travel between us and Italy and South Korea. They haven't announced that yet, but they've limited the traveling. But there's already human-to-human transmission in California. California right now, there's 8,400 people under surveillance and watch because they know that this one flight attendant was traveling back and forth between LA and South Korea. I mean, and then all these people were traveling. I just came back from Lake Tahoe, and I had a few people from, I think, LA drive over to Tahoe. Like, these 3 girls, they're friends with some of the guys in the group, and we went skiing and snowboarding with them. I might have it now. It's been a few days. I'm starting to have like a nose thing, but it could just be allergies. I had a face mask on during the airport, airplanes, and people are looking at me funny. I didn't care. I mean, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and a little discomfort and social awkwardness is okay with me in order to send the message that this is kind of serious, and for me to be okay with it. It's just like a social experiment, social exercise. Those are some of my thoughts. What are the calls to action? Number 1, you don't have to panic. This is what I constantly say. So as more and more people start panicking, I was almost in this very panicky mood weeks before, trying to get people to realize that this is coming. And now when everyone starts panicking, I'm a counterpuncher. I like to just be like, it's not that serious, guys. The actual disease is not that serious, but the implications to our daily lives, for both economically, how we travel, we want to protect our elderly, children are fine, there's not many deaths. But people who are immunocompromised, heart disease, kidney issues, lung issues, diabetes, this is a call to action to really start thinking about your health, to exercise, to have your parents exercise, to sleep well, 8 to 9 hours daily, and at the same time, for all the people I know that are party animals, no more like 3 night benders. If your immune system compromised, and a lot of these healthcare workers are, they are getting, a lot of the doctors are passing away and dying from being overworked, not slept enough, and getting reinfected, which is actually like a real thing, I think, because China just came out with 14% of the people who have been infected are, who have been discharged are now getting re-examined, and then 14% again are, of those people are getting diagnosed with corona again, and they have symptoms again. So this might be like a chickenpox situation. As an adult, it might be hard to fight, and for children it doesn't seem to bother them much. So it might be like the same type of thing. As a kid, you might not be as big of an issue. So the call to action one more time is to protect our elderly, is to watch out for, to prepare like 2 to 4 weeks of food and water. So right now in China, they've been locked down for about a month. The silver lining is Singapore, and their death rates are a lot lower. And I want to do another video on this, and I probably will, to separate it. But with Singapore, they locked down their city, and I just read an article. Shout out to Carson, he sent me an article on this. They had very drastic, stringent methods to closing their border, and then USA tried to do that, but we have so much traveling through us. But they really were stringent on locking down between South Korea and Singapore, and they closed their borders. But South Korea didn't do that. They didn't close their borders to China, just kept traveling between them and China. So did Japan. So so much to talk about. But Singapore, as a silver lining, like I said, had I think 69 cases, and all of them recovered. They had enough hospital capacity to do proper treatment to everyone. Now, if the outbreak happens at a certain hospital nearby, let's say like New Year's or another holiday, when a lot of people do stupid things and they drink too much, and there's some accidents, like some hospital waiting times at emergency rooms, as you know, if you experienced it, can be a few hours, even more if the staff on hand is not working a lot. So what happened to China is that they built 2 hospitals, right, during the height of the crisis in Wuhan, and they didn't have enough capacity to fulfill all those people, Chinese people, elderly, and I don't know who else, because China is highly censored, because state comes before the state control comes before the welfare of their people. So anyway, long story short, I think Singapore had enough capacity for the hospitals versus USA. This is very interesting for me, interesting times. I'm reflecting on like if the USA does, prepare well. But the best way is to act smart and to have some containment measures in place for your house and home and family. I have a guide that we're coming up with, our team. We read a lot of the articles and read all the recommendations using some common sense, and having plans in place with your family, talking to them about what to do, having babysitters on hand if you have children, if they close down the schools, like what Japan did nationwide. If businesses close, have a remote working situation set up with your employers or your employees. These are some of the takeaways to prep for, and 2 to 4 weeks of food, water supplies, medications, prescriptions, having a first aid kit on hand. A lot of these things that you would go out for, like medications for cough, headaches, symptoms that you would have if you did have the coronavirus. I mean, you don't only want to protect yourself, but also protect others if you have it, instead of you going out and getting those things and having a few day delay with Amazon, like getting to you. You would need those medications. Now you would go out in person, right? So even having a surgical mask for yourself if you're sick, so you don't infect others. Let's think about others first. So these are some some situations what you'd want to do in order to help others. Uh, these are some of the recommendations that I've read on ready.gov, and some common sense things that you would want to prepare: food, water, medications, uh, maybe some survival kit stuff like you would at a blackout or a snowstorm, like uh, generator. People are doing generators, and like doomsayers and survival people are like getting weapons and arms to protect their bunkers, and that's kind of like wild and out there. But uh, people watch a lot of movies with zombie apocalypses, so there's no mutations happening right now where people are changing to mutants and zombies. None of that, so don't worry about that. But I think it's pretty interesting times we're living in. And flashlights and rechargeable flashlights and batteries. There's a lot of these recommendations. Kind of like gonna alter this kind of book that I've been reading, and I'm gonna come up with a booklet of my own that's simplified, so you guys can read it, and you guys can have a resource for you to start preparing for this. Start slowly stocking up food. Don't panic. Don't run for the exits. Um, and start setting up plans for this different society we're going to live in the next few months. I don't think it's going to last longer. In Singapore, it's really warm, so actually that might be a reason why the virus has not spread and has not continued. So it might be a seasonal thing. Actually, now I think about it, makes a lot of sense. That's it for now. Really interesting about Singapore. All right, be well.